In honor of the upcoming animated Twilight series that will be an adaptation of Midnight Sun, I have decided to make my glorious return to YouTube with the Twilight video. Now, I was told that in the first video I post after the year-long absence, I should apologize or offer an explanation. But I literally do not have enough followers for me to believe that anyone even noticed. And if you're watching this in the future, I'm back. So there's been no pause in content according to you. So I'm just gonna go into the video. Twilight is the subject of many memes and a lot of hatred. It was a massive hit when it came out with a huge fan base and basically a cult following, but then we all grew out of it. And like Glee, those adoring fans turned to spiteful critics. But I believe more people like this franchise than we think. For one, it never really leaves the collective conscience. People can't stop talking about it, even if it is in a negative way. So I'll be one of the few brave souls on the internet and just come out and admit it. I like Twilight. I suppose we could call it a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel that guilty about it. I'm not claiming it's some masterpiece of cinema, and I can't really defend any of the criticisms that people have of the movies. But there it is. I like Twilight. So let's talk about it. I'm just going to give a rapid fire of my thoughts in a quick run through of the movie because trying to structure this video any other way would just do a disservice to it. As soon as Bella gets to Forks, there's an interesting color gradient, blue tinged, which I've always known, but I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I know why they do it. It's supposed to show how dull and sunless Forks is. The town is always cloudy and rainy, and Bella hates it, so tinting the movie this way as a visual representation makes sense, but it adds a weird quality to the movie. It being so visually dull actually works against the movie. It makes the movie feel dull, and this is only made worse by the pacing and acting choices. I'm not sure why they went with narration for the opening as opposed to having the scenes just play out, but I don't particularly care. What's funny about it is that it isn't used consistently. It's used at the beginning like it's Bella's dying thoughts, and then it kind of morphs to seem more like Bella is writing in her diary or something, but then it comes back at some point for her to just say one line. So I think they literally just had information they wanted the audience to have, and they were like, screw it, let's just have Bella say it directly to them. The awkwardness between Bella and her dad, perfect. Both actors just do a great job. Charlie is clearly happy she's there, but isn't particularly good at showing it. It feels like the reunion of two characters who don't know each other, but should. It's authentic and relatable, especially this silence where they're just standing in each other's presence, not sure what to say or how to leave the situation. I like how Bella just doesn't give a damn about what people think about her truck. Like, it's so trash, but she really loves it, and she doesn't even feel any shame about it. How many high school movies or TV shows have we watched where the characters are so embarrassed by their beat down car and are so worried about what other kids will say? But not Bella. And we know in the books she's very defensive about it with Edward and Jacob. Freaking Anna Kendrick, man. She kills it as Jessica. We all agree on this, I know, but it just should be said. Not just because she's Anna Kendrick and therefore a good comedy actress, but because she brings Jessica to life realistically. She's nice and she's always smiling, but with undertones that make it clear she doesn't really like Bella. And we don't need a scene where Bella turns her back and Jessica's smile drops and she rolls her eyes or something. Like, Anna Kendrick manages to get this across with just the tone of her voice and her line delivery. Since we're talking about good performances, the boys do a good job of bringing to life the aspect of how everyone was so obsessed with Bella. They do it authentically too, especially when they're all together. I love this first scene in the cafeteria when one boy kisses her on the cheek, I always forget his name, and then pulls out Mike's chair and Mike chases after him, and then Eric shuts Angela down so unnecessarily aggressively about the future. Like when Jessica says it feels like first grade, it really does. And Bella looks and feels appropriately confused and uncomfortable. The boys are always immature and playful, and I think this is important to contrast how serious Bella is. Like, Edward is always lamenting how she should be a normal teenager and be with normal teenage boys, and if the romance was done better, the way Mike and Eric and the rest all act would be a great way to bring out exactly why Bella loves Edward. She is very mature for her age because of having to take care of her mother all her life. She doesn't want to be with a boy. She likes Edward because he is a man. They have deep conversations and they spend a lot of time just existing in each other's company, reading books and stuff like that. Plus, when things start getting really bad for Bella, it's good to show that her friends are just happy and carefree. They are still teenagers. It's an important part of the story and acted really well by these boys, especially in this movie, I think. Bella really is so pale, and I think it's hilarious considering the Cullens are supposed to be unnaturally pale, and Edward is so obsessed with the color in her cheeks and all that, but they look exactly like Bella. Like, I would even say she looks more pale than Rosalie. Obviously, they needed to make sure the Cullens actually looked attractive, so they couldn't make them look weirdly white, but then they should have made Kristen Stewart tan, because that particular vampire trait is just lost. This scene with Bella and her dad at the diner is so funny to me because when this guy shows up and he's like, "Hey Bella, remember me? I played Santa that one time." Like, what? First of all, as Santa, you're in a suit. So how would she know you? And second, when he says he bets he made an impression, Charlie says, "Always do." And the waitress says, "Butt crack Santa." Excuse me? We're talking about a Santa Claus that we get kids to interact with, right? Why would you say this? Why is it funny? See, this is where the voiceover could have come in handy. Bella becomes so obsessed with Edward after meeting him once, him being rude, and not even a single word being said between them. Nothing about Bella, who for all intents and purposes is a loner, supports the idea that she would become so obsessed with Edward. She doesn't really hang out with her friends. We never see her really enjoy their company or act like she even actually likes these people. Like in this scene. They're right there, right behind her, and they even call to her, but she would rather stand on her own in the cold with earphones reading a book. So why does she care about Edward? We never actually get an explanation. The voiceover could have been used to give us that access into her inner thoughts. How maybe she can't stop thinking about him and it's really weird. How she wishes she could snap out of it. Maybe try to convince herself that it was just because of how weird and rude he was. And really, she was just anxious to find out what the hell was happening. But we don't get anything. And once he starts talking to her, Bella's entire life just becomes Edward. Forget her friends who were actually so nice to her when they didn't have to be. Forget the fact that we've been shown that she actually likes being alone. No, Edward is her everything. I know there is so much about Kristen Stewart's acting that people like to criticize, and she is awkward. Yes, I won't deny that. But given the context of the book, and knowing how flustered Bella is that Edward is even talking to her at all, that he's having such a casual conversation, asking about her life, I don't hate it. Bella is supposed to be a bland, unimpressive girl to the point that even she can't understand what Edward, or any of the other boys for that matter, would even see in her. Kristen Stewart leans into this awkwardness, delivering the lines like she's so mesmerized by Edward that she just remembers to talk at the last second. Like this scene at the hospital where he tells her to just thank him and she just blurts out, "Thank you." That's literally how Bella is. Like, for goodness sake, this girl faints after Edward kisses her once. Like, he's such an overload for her brain to process. I like the fact that Kristen Stewart delivers her lines this way, because it is weird, and Bella knows it, but she can't help how he affects her. It's why she's so bamboozled that he likes her. Going back to the point on the paleness for a second, Carlisle seems more unnaturally pale than all the others. Like, from far, you could be like, oh, he's very good looking. But the closer he gets, you're like, something is off. which is the effect the vampires are supposed to have. So well done on that. This biology teacher really worked for his paycheck. He wasn't just mailing it in. No, he really, really feels like a high school teacher trying so hard to engage his class. And considering he's such a non-existent character, it amuses me how many lines of dialogue he actually has, much less how funny and well thought out they are. Like, the writers were determined to have him be a good and believable biology teacher. They were not going to get called out on that. Putting aside the fact that there is no plausible build-up to Bella and Edward's friendship, because that's how it is in the books as well, I do like their interactions with each other. The banter they share is actually really natural, and they do have good chemistry when they're not trying to be awkward or bloodthirsty. If we had more scenes like this, with them just getting along and enjoying being around each other, the story would be perfect. I've never noticed this before. Guys, did we know this? In the Quilliot story that Jake is telling Bella, the Native Americans are wearing wolf masks. I've never ever noticed this. Why on earth would they do this? Like, they don't want to give away the wolf bloodline in the next movie. Fine. But why are they wearing masks? Like, just let them be? I don't know. That said, I wish the story that Jake is telling Bella was a little darker or scarier. Like, him actually getting a bit serious, talking about how bad the cold ones were, to make it more tense. So when Jessica screams here and Bella jumps, we jump too, you know? Oh my god, guys. I just realized that the guy Laurent, James, and Victoria kill is butt crack Santa. Like, I have literally never realized that before. I legitimately thought he was a random guy they killed. And later when they say he was a friend of Charlie's, I figured he was like one of the cops. Or it was just because it was a small town and everyone knew each other. Oh, goodness. That actor really brought nothing to the screen. I wonder why Bella's friends are even friends with her. Like, she's never into anything they're into. She doesn't say much. She just kind of exists around them. But they always act so happy to see her. Well, everyone but Jessica. Especially the boys. Like, why do they want to take her to prom? Is it because she's a mystery? It's a challenge of getting someone like her to agree to go out with you? And what about Angela? When they say they're going dress shopping, she tells Bella she needs her opinion. But why? Like, does Bella ever offer her opinion on anything else? One scene of Bella actually being friends with these people would go a long way. But then again, it's not that big of a deal because the story isn't about them or her relationship with them or her time at school at all, really. It's all just filler for her time with Edward. So in that way, her limited interactions with them actually make sense. Edward is actually so creepy. Like, the way he says, I feel very protective of you, right here. The fact that Bella doesn't begin backing out of the room, especially considering that she believes he is something supernatural, is definitely one of the reasons why Edward is convinced that she isn't mentally stable. The run-through that Edward does of what everyone is thinking in the restaurant, the money, sex, money, it just always felt so wrong to me. People's thoughts are just not that simple. A few people thinking about sex, sure. It's a nice restaurant on a weekend, so people could be out on dates. But I wish they hadn't broken it down to just that and a cat. Make it interesting, you know? Some people, like me, think about the most random things. And I know in the books, Edward is always saying how boring and predictable people are because their thoughts are all more or less the same. And that's why Bella is so intriguing to him. Even if he could read her mind, I think he'd still be intrigued because she doesn't think like a normal person. She's drawn to danger. She's unpredictable. Like how he tells her he can read everyone's mind but hers, and she wonders if there's something wrong with her. That's what Edward likes about her. After nearly a century of everyone acting exactly how he expects them to, Bella is a breath of fresh air. But they don't bring that out in the movies, mostly because there was no Midnight Sun to give that perspective. All this to say, I wish they'd taken the opportunity to have people thinking some creative things. I could claim to be a mind reader and then say some basic things like this, and it wouldn't be very convincing. But if I said someone was thinking about a project at work, or something about how beautiful their date was, or how bad their food was, like, that's more realistic to me. Anyway, I've spent way too long talking about something so small and inconsequential, so let's move on. The most infamous scene. This is the skin of a killer, Bella. The decision to have vampires sparkle in the sun is such a weird one, and I will forever be confused about what exactly these vampires are made of. When they're ripped apart, it looks like glass. It looks and sounds like glass. It sounds like porcelain when they touch each other. So are they glass? This scene really is just so cringy. There's no defending it. The actors seem like they were uncomfortable. The way they move around each other just feels so forced. Like they were just making sure they hit their marks. To be honest, Kristen Stewart actually does a better job than Robert Pattinson, in my opinion. She keeps trying to get close to him to prove that she's not afraid, but also because she's so drawn to him. And he keeps trying to stay away because he's scared about his control. That dynamic makes sense. But then, after he quickly shifts away from her and she follows right here, he just turns and pins her to a boulder. But then, he doesn't really pin her. He just awkwardly backs her against it and then touches the boulder, and it's like he doesn't like how it feels, so he doesn't want to put his whole hand on it. So he leaves his fingertips against it, looking like the last thing he wants to do is be in Bella's personal space, and then he lets his hands drop. Like, it's so weird. If he doesn't want to be close to her, why did he corner her to the boulder? And if he does, why is he acting like he's being forced to do it? Then he asks Bella to tell him what she's thinking, and she says, "Now I'm afraid." Then takes such a long pause, which is so weird, before saying, "I'm not afraid of you, I'm afraid of losing you." Which, one, why in this moment would she suddenly become afraid of losing Edward? Because he asked her earlier if she was afraid, and she said no. What has changed? She says, "Now I'm afraid," which would make more sense if he kept trying to get away from her, like genuinely wanting to. Oh, he could have just run off, and Bella's looking for him, yelling for him with fear in her voice. So he comes back and is like, "Are you afraid, Bella?" Thinking the fear in his voice is because she's worried he's going to attack her. And then she says, "Yes, I'm afraid of losing you." As it stands, the scene doesn't make sense. One, why does Edward jump? Right here. In the middle of their conversation. He just jumps. Two, when it transitions to him jumping on the car, where is he jumping from? Why is he jumping onto the roof of her car? And again, I ask, where is he jumping from? The Cullens house really is beautiful. I would never live here, but that's because of the surrounding forest. The house itself is gorgeous. I love the scene when Bella gets introduced to the family. It's actually really funny and cute. Esme is perfect. She's so warm and so obviously happy that Bella is there. I love the detail of them all looking up before she actually enters the room. And Rosalie is like, "Oh, get a whiff of that." Nice touch. I like how dramatic Rosalie is because that is really how she is. She's very melodramatic, and Edward is so done with her all of the time. I love Alice. Again, I think she was really well cast. And then at the end of the scene, Esme telling Rosalie to clean up her mess. They just feel like a family, which is such an important thing to establish in this scene because it's the first time the audience is being introduced to them as well. I'm going to admit something. I don't really get the graduation caps joke. Edward says it's a private joke, but I don't get it. No one else ever comes here, so it literally is just for them. Why would it be funny to see all the graduation caps hung up from your years and years of high school? People really like to bash the acting. I've said this already, but I don't agree. It is obviously the intention of the scenes that the characters be awkward. When Edward tries to dance with Bella, it's supposed to be awkward. He's shy, and she's awkward and clumsy. She doesn't want to dance. It's just done so well. I love Bella's lullaby. To be honest, I love all the piano stuff Edward plays. There's a song that's Esme's favorite. I love that too. And Renesmee's lullaby is my favorite. Really think about it in context. A boy you only just started dating tells you that he's been coming in your window for the past couple of months to watch you sleep. Like before you guys were even friends. When the only interaction you'd had was an awkward lesson when you believed he thought you smelled terrible the entire time. Their first kiss is so slow and cautious, it really feels like Edward is fighting himself. And this is what I'm saying about the actors genuinely doing their best. Edward knows Bella wants him to kiss her. This isn't hesitation because of nerves or chivalry. He is a bloodthirsty vampire, particularly thirsty for Bella's blood. Add to that the lust he feels for her, and he's actually so scared that he'll lose control and kill her. So he moves slowly, telling her more than once to stay still, moving in, then stopping to make sure he's still okay, inch by inch preparing himself. The actors knew what they were doing, guys. This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise. Ignoring the fact that Bella could in no way umpire this game, I love everything about this scene. I love the music. Frankly, when these movies add background music, they knock it out of the park. Pun intended. I love the Twilight soundtrack, which makes it even weirder when they decide to leave music out of the scenes. I love how much fun all the actors are clearly having shooting this scene, which translate into the characters looking like they're enjoying themselves. I love seeing the Cullens be a family. What is it with the Cullens calling people monkeys? Edward does it with Bella, and now Rosalie does it with Emmett. What is this obsession with monkeys? Okay, so I know the bat is metal, but the ball is just a regular ball, right? If they're really hitting it so hard that they need a thunderstorm for cover, wouldn't the ball be destroyed? Wouldn't they need a new ball every time someone was up to bat? Now, this is where I think the story could have been told better, in a way that I can say it as a genuine criticism. People complain about Alice's visions, but that part makes sense. She's distracted at the moment and not actively looking into the future for anything. So it literally isn't until Laurent and team decide to change course and are already headed for the Cullens that she sees them coming. And let's remember that vampires move at lightning speed. So her saying there isn't a lot of time makes sense. But I really don't understand why Edward couldn't have driven away with Bella, or run away even, since he's probably faster than the car. They stand around having a really long conversation with Laurent, and it's only Edward's reaction to James's threat that makes him decide to hunt Bella. If they're already in the car driving away by the time James, Laurent, and Victoria reach Carlisle and the others, why would they chase them? There are humans all over the place, and they anyway assume that Bella is a snack. They just wanted to play baseball. They wouldn't care that Edward has left with a human. It's the overprotectiveness and clear affection that sets James off, something that he wouldn't have been able to pick up on if they were running or driving away just as he got to the clearing. Or why didn't Carlisle and Emmett run out to meet Laurent and team as close to the entrance of the clearing as possible, while Edward rushed Bella in the opposite direction? Why did they wait for them to come all the way to where they were? There's no way the best plan was for them to involve Bella in the conversation mere feet from 3 dangerous vampires they know nothing about. Then, the real problem with Alice's visions in this scene is that she would have definitely been running scenarios in her head from the second Carlisle and Laurent started talking. Edward can read her mind. This is what they do in later books with the Volturi, working together in real time to make the decisions that will lead to the best outcome. So do you want to tell me that none of those scenarios included James smelling Bella, trying to attack, Edward reacting and sending James off? I don't think so. They would both know that Edward keeping calm was vital. And on that note, it's so laughable that it takes wind blowing through Bella's hair for all of them to be like, a human? No way! Rosalie says she can smell her across the field, and surrounded by other vampires, she would stand out. My favorite Bella is when she's arguing with Edward. Like, she's at her best when things are going crazy. In the books, the entire plan is literally Bella's idea. Despite the fact that a deranged vampire is now hell-bent on killing her, she cares more about her dad and argues stubbornly with an irate Edward who is trying very hard to ignore her. This scene is actually very sad. Like, poor Charlie. He's just so confused, trying his best to figure out what's going on. I really feel Bella's pain in having to hurt him. When he's like, I know I'm not that fun to be around, but I can change. Poor Charlie. Especially since he'd expressed concern earlier in the movie that he leaves her alone too much. Then when he realizes she's set on going, his only objection is that she can't drive at night. Like, he's such a good dad. Man, my heart breaks for him. Here's the other thing with the scene. How does Bella know what her mother said to him when she left? Her mother must have told her, but why? Why would you tell your child, 17 years at the oldest, the exact words you told her father when you left? The pacing of this movie is bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Bella is supposed to be Edward's life now, but we've seen literally one long scene of them hanging out in a tree. Like, what a weird choice. Rather than showing them bonding, actually talking to each other, connecting, I don't know. All this "you are my life" stuff actually doesn't feel true, at least from Edward's perspective. Like, we've seen how obsessed Bella is, sure, but not really how much Edward loves Bella. Unless you count creeping in through her window for weeks before even talking to her. How does Edward know that James has figured out their ruse? He isn't anywhere near close enough to Alice for him to read her thoughts or see her vision. But here he reacts like he knows James has turned back. Is he reading James? Oh, actually, yeah, forget that. He's reading James' mind. James' trick is clever, but think about what he actually did here. He went to Bella's old home, wanting to find her mother to lure Bella to him, but she's not there, so he decides to wait. Now, while he's waiting, he snoops around the house, finds an old recorder, and just sits and watches the videos saved there. Then the idea comes to him that he can use the audio to trick Bella, and he calls her. It's already weird that he watches the videos, but that aside, as far as he knows, Bella could be anywhere in the world. Luring her to the dance studio is fine, but is he prepared to just wait for days? What if they had taken her to Alaska, where there would be more people to protect her? Or the Amazon? And I know in the books there's some explanation as to how he knows where she is, but there isn't in the movie, and that's what we're talking about here. Damn! The way James breaks her leg is brutal. I feel it in my whole body every time. Like, you just know that hurt. This fight is thrilling. The way they're just growling right in each other's faces, the way James looks at Edward before biting Bella, like he's playing a game. This is about Edward, not Bella. Why does Carlisle tell Edward to remember who he is? He's too good to kill James, but the others aren't? What does this even mean? Edward has every right to kill James here. I don't get why Carlisle is making it seem like him doing so would somehow be him tainting his character. I just want to point out Jasper, Alice, and Emmett in the background dancing around the fire. You see? The romance was so badly done that when she's dying and she's having flashbacks, most of them are of trees and snow. And then her and Edward just lying together in the clearing. Like, that is proof enough that they did not have enough happy romantic scenes together. And considering the whole movie is supposed to be about how much the two of them love each other and how their worlds now revolve around each other, that's saying a lot. How do you apologize to your father for this? What explanation do you give? Oh, Dad, I had a good date with Edward and it was so good that I realized I might love him. And that freaked me out because I saw myself living in Forks for the rest of my life. But After almost dying, I realized that I actually love Forks and I would love to spend the rest of my life there. Like, maybe she should blame it all on her mom and say that she'd spent so long hearing her mom talk about how horrible Forks is and she just freaked out hearing her mom's voice in her head. But then, what explanation does she give her mom? Basically, I would love to know what Bella tells either of her parents about why she decided to leave Forks in the first place. The cover story for her injuries was fine, but if I was Charlie, I'd be insisting to know what happened at the baseball game that made Bella want to leave Forks forever. Kristen Stewart does a really good job of freaking out here. Like, I always feel the genuine panic. All that was missing was the blaring monitors, honestly. And this is what I mean by them showing how Edward is Bella's life. The way she completely freaks out, I mean, she can't even talk. She absolutely cannot believe that he's suggesting they be apart. When she says that he's her life, you know it's true. But Edward, yeah, they really haven't done the legwork there to make me believe that he would be that devastated if she left him. The way Bella's dad looks at Edward when he says she's perfect. Hilarious, man. Like, whoever this, let me check. This actor, Billy Burke, he does an amazing job as Charlie. Like, there's so much contempt on his face right now. I like the song they danced to at prom. And I like the song they end the movie on, with the knowledge that Victoria is still a threat. It's a good way to end the movie. Twilight is not a good movie. It has weird dialogue, weird acting, weird pacing, a strange lack of music in some scenes that I think would have benefited from it, a weird blue hue that makes the movie feel dull, and coupled with the way the characters talk, it just really makes the movie feel slow. It feels like nothing is happening all movie, and then boom, they're being chased by James, and Bella's in danger, and oh, Bella and Edward are in love to the point where she would happily die for him. It's not a good story. It has a huge pacing problem, as I've said, especially when it comes to Edward and Bella's romance. A lot of the events of the story are very avoidable, and the depth is just lacking from most of the scenes. The actors try their best, and I really do believe that, but the depth of some scenes is just completely lost, like it was never written. Why do Edward and Bella like each other? The movie doesn't tell us. It seems like he likes her because he can't read her mind, and she likes him because he's a vampire. I really wish they developed the romance better, even if it was in a weird voiceover, where she says that she spent every day with Edward, learning about how he likes this and that, how he was always so eager to learn every little inconsequential thing about her. And though she finds it weird, no one had ever cared so much about her favorite color before. Something random like that. Yet, I like it. I can't tell you why. I don't know if it's because I watched it as a teenager and it's just nostalgia, or if it's because I like the vampire werewolf type fantasy stories and this one is one of the only ones. I don't know. But I do genuinely like it. The things that should make me roll my eyes, like the cringy dialogue and the visual effects, they just make me laugh. And not in a this is so bad, it's good kind of way. I like all the movies, even the one with the CGI demon baby spawn. I like Bella. I like how dramatic she is. I like how obsessed she is with Edward even. Despite me complaining about how that is literally all her character boils down to, I don't think she's a bland, nothing character, like some people try to say. I actually saw someone try to call her a Mary Sue. Like, if you think Bella is a Mary Sue, you are delusional. Is there a more flawed female character? She's smart, she's stubborn, she's caring, she's very awkward, she's very brave. She has a character. Just because it's one you might not like does not mean it isn't there. I like the drama of it all. And in later movies, I like the expansion of the world, the wolves and the Volturi. I love Alice. I also like the action sequence with James at the end. It has impact, if that makes sense. Like, Bella is genuinely injured. Badly. So the threat feels real. You know that if Edward doesn't save her, James will definitely kill her. And though James and Edward throw each other around without getting hurt, you can feel Edward's anger. You can feel his fear for Bella. You can feel how James is taunting him, how sure James is that he's going to win. Honestly, this is something that I think the writers always do well. The fights are all pretty epic. Every criticism that people have of this series is true, and I agree with them. But the fact is, I have a genuinely good time when I watch them. I get invested in the drama. I feel the tension. I feel Bella's undying love for Edward throughout all the movies. Simply put, I like Twilight.